All right. Hello, everyone, and apologies for the chat tech issues this morning. Hopefully, all of you are set up in your rooms. Thank you for your patience as we fix the tech challenges. And I'm excited to be here with you, teachers, students, anyone who's joining us today as we continue our journey in the AI challenge. I'm sure you're immersed now in learning about AI, have lots of great questions, and hopefully your thinking is shifting as you learn new things about AI. As my name is Heidi Siwak. I'm the teacher coach for the Artificial Intelligence Challenge, and we're excited about our guest today, Jennifer Addison, who is going to be here from the AI4Good Lab. But we are going to start with the land acknowledgement. The land acknowledgement is something we hear regularly in schools, and we want to make sure that we honor the message. And it's not just a thing that we do. So let's take a moment to get ourselves settled. Ground your feet, maybe put your feet on the floor, do something that feels comfortable. Take a deep breath and connect to the land. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on distinct and diverse traditional territories of the First Nations and Métis where we live. And I think we are on lands that are governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. The idea is that we all can peacefully live together in sharing this one dish, this land, and all that it provides, so long as we each are mindful of only taking what we need. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. And I think we believe that the land acknowledgement is a moment for learning. So I am going to share something that I found really fascinating as I was learning about AI, and became curious about what maybe Indigenous communities are doing with artificial intelligence. And I stumbled across this effort called Abundant Intelligences, funded by the Canadian government out of Concordia University, where Indigenous peoples from around the world are working together to design AI based on Indigenous knowledge systems. And I really encourage you to go and have a look at that, particularly because we've been hearing about AI described in a very particular way, and even the language people are using at Embodied Intelligence to describe what AI is, how they imagine AI to work within their communities, and what they offer to the rest of us based on what they're learning about and thinking about AI. It just gives us a very different understanding of the possibilities of AI. So I encourage you to go and have a look at Abundant Intelligences. All right. Why should we learn about AI for good? That's a really big question. For me, as I think about what we've learned so far about things that we find really great about I, but things that are puzzling us or even maybe unsettling us, and some of the things that we've learned about artificial intelligence, things like biases that we've seen, times that AI has been used when it's been used in a nefarious way. But we also know that AI is a tool to help us make decisions and solve really big problems. And so today's topic is how can we actually use AI in a way that advances all of us, is good for our communities, is good for people. And that is why I'm so thrilled to have Jennifer with us today from the AI4Good Lab. Um, the AI4Good Lab is based in Montreal, out of one of Canada's premier artificial intelligence institutes called Mila. She's a program manager, and she does really interesting work bringing diverse young people together to explore to learn about AI and explore the possibilities of AI for good. And so with that, Jennifer, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to welcome you. We are so grateful that you are here for us and still here to learn tech challenges. Welcome, welcome. We warmly welcome you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today and speak a bit about the AI4Good Lab. Um, I'll go ahead and share my screen first, just to add to the land acknowledgement. I'm based in Montreal, which is called Tiohtià:ke, and it's the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. I think as we are reflecting on AI and AI for social good, for me, a lot of the work that we're doing around social good begins with truth, which is part of truth and reconciliation, but more specifically, truth telling and trying to discover the truth behind some of these problems that we are trying to solve exist. So, as we're considering how can we do the most good, it's just as important to understand why these issues exist in the first place to really create solutions that benefit the communities that are most harmed or impacted. Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm getting everything set up on my end. There we go. Okay, so just a quick overview. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and my journey. I think it's important to kind of situate myself and also for you to know who you're hearing from. I'll give you an overview of the AI for Good Lab and kind of a snapshot of what happened in our most recent cohort, which took place in May and June 2024. And then I'll talk a little bit about DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion in AI, specifically through the context of the AI for Good Lab. And we'll have time for questions or any just reflections or discussion if you have. So I'm Jennifer Addison. I use they, them, and she, they. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I am originally from Arlington, Virginia, and Arlington, Virginia is a suburb of Washington, D.C., so it's located about 10 minutes just across the river, the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. I really credit this with why I have been so passionate about social impact and social good and community building for my entire life. Um, I went to an alternative program for middle school and high school, which really instilled values of democracy and consensus building and community in me, and really showed me just how impactful an individual and also our communities can really be in creating change. So that's really where I was born and raised as the start of this journey I've been on to try to give back and contribute to our society in a positive way. I studied global studies at a liberal arts university. So my focus was the Middle East, so Middle Eastern studies. That included studying religion, women's studies, history, economics. Um, and I think this is important to share because we just never know where we'll be led. I had students in the AI for Good Lab this year who would come to me for advice sometimes and express that they had so many interests. So yes, they were interested in AI and computer science, but they were also interested in criminology or psychology. And I always encourage folks to learn about everything that they're interested in, within reason as much as possible. So I studied global studies, and yet I find myself at an AI research institute. And so I think it's really important just to demonstrate to kind of follow your heart, follow your interests. And things will find a way of working out in terms of your career and your professional future. So I'll talk more about that later as well. I have worked in a lot of fields. So, like I said, I started with global studies, but I actually got started working in political fundraising for women candidates who wanted to run for office at the state, local, and federal level in the United States. I also have worked to train women on how to run for office. Um, I worked at US State Department exchange programs. So those specifically were to bring young women from the Middle East and North Africa over to the United States to get education in STEM. So all of these things are very related to where I am now. So I've always had this specific passion around gender equity and how to achieve that in different domains, whether that's politics, whether that's tech. And I've also kind of worked in philanthropy and national security, and most recently working in diversity, equity, and inclusion in a corporate space. And I've been at Mila, which is based in Montreal, for about a year almost. It'll be a year in December. My hobbies, some that I, will mention. I love cycling, so long distance rides. I love reading so much. And I think if you're interested in AI, maybe this is something you shared. I have a love for sci-fi and fantasy, and I think world building and our imaginations, if we're able to unlock them, just can help us to really come up with some really exciting ideas and new tools. And I love cooking and baking. So I've been in Montreal for about 7 years. And I was introduced to the AI4Good Lab through a networking event that was specifically around Pride, which happens in Canada in June, and in Montreal in August. And so I think this is important to mention because the AI4Good Lab is a space that is meant to encourage folks who do not see themselves in AI and in tech to be able to envision themselves in that space. So for me, who has worked in politics or in community organizing, working in tech wasn't necessarily ever something I could see for myself. But going to this networking event, which was specifically to help folks in the LGBTQ2 plus community uh, know what jobs were available in tech and AI and be able to understand what kind of training and education they might need and just meet other people is actually what led me to this point. So the AI4Good Lab was founded in 2017. So the most recent cohort that just happened in the spring was the seventh, I'm sorry, the ninth cohort. Math is hard this morning. And so the co-founders really saw an issue in terms of gender diversity in the tech space. And so they created this program to try to improve the culture in the industry. So when you think about the fact that there's a lack of a certain group in a certain space, the culture of that space is also impacted. So, for example, the AI4Good Lab is for women and gender diverse people. And if there's a lack of those folks in the space, then this culture that is exclusive or exclusionary to those groups will persist, and it will be a harder and harder environment once those folks start to enter that space. So they decided, the co-founders of the lab, Dr. Joanna Precup and Angelique Minella, decided to create the lab to address the issues or the barriers that are preventing women and gender diverse people from getting into the industry in the first place. So that's through mentorship and education and skill building. And they wanted to do this all through the lens of social good. So not just let's increase gender diversity in tech and AI, but let's also, as we're equipping these folks with these skills, guide them on how to use AI for social good. So the program is open again to women and gender diverse people. So that includes non-binary, trans, and two-spirit people as well, and anyone with a lived experience of misogyny. So what I mean by that is really anyone whose gender presents a barrier to them accessing education or careers in tech, anyone that faces discrimination based on their gender in this space, et cetera. So the lab is hosted at Mila. Mila is one of the three AI research institutes in Canada, as Heidi mentioned. So there is one in Edmonton called Amy. So they host one of our cohorts as well. There is Vector in Toronto, and they host one of our cohorts. And then CFAR, which oversees the Canadian, the Pan-Canadian AI strategy. So the national AI strategy for Canada is also one of our partners. And to date, after 9 cohorts, the lab has over 400 alumni across Canada and really across the world because we have international students as well. So the lab runs for 7 weeks, and there's 2 parts to that. So the first 4 weeks is really the foundation, the introduction to machine learning, the technical workshops around things like data preparation, how to code using Python, and things like that. And then the last 3 weeks, the participants are put into groups and they work on a project. So they are tasked with coming up with an AI prototype or tool or kind of new technology that addresses a social issue. And they receive a lot of support along the way from our speakers to our workshop facilitators. They have teaching assistants and mentors supporting them along the way as well. And a lot of people give their time to this program to make it happen. And I think that's really, really important. When we're talking about creating spaces for folks with a similar lived experience, so in this case, that's folks who identify as women or non-binary, or again, have that lived experience of misogyny. I think it's important to remember that this work is not done in a vacuum. So we want to create a space where folks feel safer, where they maybe that might mean being in the majority in a space. That might mean being assured that there's multiple people in a space that can kind of relate to you and your lived experience. And so there's also a lot of folks who are frankly just allies that support this program. So that includes the three AI research institutes and CFAR. That includes our sponsors. So sponsors like Manulife and DeepMind and Google who believe in this mission. We do have a majority of our speakers and mentors and workshop facilitators who identify as women or non-binary this year. I think it was about 69%. But there are also men and folks of every gender who are supporting this, who are coming to teach. So this space is really important, and creating that safe space is important. And then we invite in folks who are just really supportive of and passionate about this mission, and they can be folks of any gender. Okay, so to give you an idea of what happened in 2024, we hosted 90 participants. And we had 4 cohorts. So one in Montreal, based at Mila, one in Edmonton, based at AMI, the Alberta Machine Learning Institute, one in Toronto at Vector, and then we had a fully virtual cohort. So this is kind of one of the ways that we try to keep the program accessible. So folks could live anywhere in Canada and still participate in this program by joining us online. And in some cases, we were able to help folks relocate just for the duration of the program. So the AI4Good Lab is unique in that our students do not have to have any prior experience with machine learning. I'm just adjusting my slides quickly. 1 second. Okay. Hopefully you can still see the full screen. So the AI4Good Lab is more than just a technical training. It really serves as a catalyst for culture change. Because of the focus on social good, because of the focus on inclusion, it's really a unique environment. So the students are receiving specialized training. So they don't have any prior experience with machine learning, which is already removing one barrier. So if you're interested in AI or working in tech, sometimes it can feel like you have to come into this space already knowing quite a bit. And I think I felt this way a little bit, to be honest, in my role, where I have worked in programs like this to help increase gender diversity in different spaces, but I've never worked in AI. And coming into a research institution, certainly I had moments of feeling like I didn't belong there because I didn't come in armed with a lot of knowledge about AI. Now that this field is changing, frankly, on a daily basis, and I've heard this from some experts in AI that I've now had the pleasure of getting to know professionally, and it's been very welcoming. And once they were able to say, we're learning every day, everything is changing every day, and we're all doing our best to kind of stay on top of the latest emerging trends and knowledge related to AI. So the lab does not require anyone to have any previous knowledge of AI. Most of our students are at the undergraduate level. Sometimes we take folks who are in CEGEP, which is kind of the pre-college or pre-university in Quebec. And some of our participants might be master's students, but none are PhD students. That's because the lab is really rooted in giving folks opportunity that they might not have already had. So the further you might be in your education or career, the more likely it is that you've probably had a bit more exposure to different networks and experiences and opportunities. So we try to focus on the undergraduate age range. And then a lot of our trainees do have a background in computer science or engineering or a different STEM field, but that's not required. how we kind of get around that is that we do recommend that folks have taken certain math classes. So that's so that they can keep up with the curriculum. But like I said, they maybe are studying criminology and also have learned how to code Python and just want to begin to understand how they might be able to bring this interest from, a different field that seems unrelated and kind of combine it with AI. So I think that's why the lab is a really unique experience. So we have lectures that are the more technical piece, but we also have a speaker series, and this is really where the social good piece comes in. So we try to weave in topics to try to help the trainees begin to understand how to apply this technical knowledge in the real world. So, what does it mean when someone is using AI in the healthcare industry? We talk about Indigenous topics in AI. We talk about privacy in AI. So, there are a lot of topics. AI touches every aspect of our life at this point. So, we bring in speakers and we have workshops to help folks understand, okay, what does it actually mean to work in AI? What does it actually mean to use AI for social good? What are the things I should be thinking about in terms of ethics, in terms of fairness? So the speaker series and the technical lectures are really kind of hand in hand. So we know that our trainees will always get the technical skills that they need to work in the industry eventually, but it's really these topics that the speakers bring forward that kind of anchor their knowledge and set them on the path to do good with AI. And so this social good theme is really weaved throughout the program. As I said, during the last 3 weeks, the trainees work in teams to develop an AI prototype for social good. And they are actually kind of judged on this when they present their projects at our demo day. So one team from each cohort wins an award, and that allows them to continue working on their project. So that could be financial support, that could just be project development or management consultation with someone from Mila, for example. One of our teams is actually in 3 project accelerators right now. So one at McGill, one with an organization called Borealis, and then one also at Mila, which is an entrepreneurship lab. So we really try to set them up to create projects that not only are impactful or create social impact, but that are viable, that they can continue working on and kind of turn into something that they might want to work on after they graduate or whatever they really can envision. So we asked them to consider, you can kind of see the questions around social good and how we try to keep them on track to be thinking about that in this rubric, which is used by the judges to evaluate the final projects. So when we're talking about innovation, um, is this something new? And specifically, how is it different from existing solutions? What did you consider that other folks maybe have not? And that might mean you considered a perspective from a community that typically had not had their voice heard, who is impacted by this issue, but for whatever reason has been marginalized and excluded from conversations as solutions were developed. And are there any other areas that could benefit from this project? So a lot of the social issues that we are thinking about that are top of mind are interlinked. So how far will that innovation reach? Impact. So what impact will the project have? And we can encourage them to consider the harmful impacts as well as the positive impacts, um, and to really consider the harmful impacts because I think it can be really hard, especially once you get into working at like larger corporations and companies, sometimes to have this approach where you're saying, okay, the harms outweigh the goods. Maybe this product is really good, and maybe this product will be really profitable. But we also know that this product has the potential to do a lot of harm. So maybe we don't develop this, or maybe we don't make it accessible to the public, or to be able to ask yourself those questions, acknowledge that there's harm, and then take action based on that versus based on how profitable it might be, for example, again. And so we ask the students to try to consult the community that will be the most impacted by their project. How will you do that? How will you make sure that you're doing it in a meaningful way? How can you ensure that you're not just consulting the community and taking their comments and not actually using them or implementing them. So these are the questions that we're asking them when we are evaluating their final projects. And then ethics, again, are they actually considering the ethical concerns? So it's possible to go through an entire project development phase and not once consider the ethics behind what you're building. And that's, again, something that we're trying to teach. So we have those sessions on fairness, we have sessions on transparency, on responsible AI. And so the judges are asking questions related to those themes to see how well the team actually was able to, or if they did or did not consider the ethical implications of what they're building. So I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the winning project or all of the winning projects this year. We saw a lot of really exciting projects, and for us, it's also fun to see kind of what's top of mind for the next generation of leaders in the field. This year, there were quite a few projects at the intersection of health, wellness, mental health, and AI. So we had a team from Edmonton that created an AI assistant tool to aid the visually impaired, so navigate their surroundings. Um, it's really amazing that after 7 weeks, they had a fully functioning demonstration of this project, and they had a side-by-side video, one of a current tool that's on the market, and then a video of how their tool works. And their tool just blew this current tool out of the water. Um, Again, it's really amazing once you're in an environment where you feel kind of safe to learn and grow what you can come up with. This team in Montreal is the one I mentioned that's currently in 3 accelerators. So they're trying to tackle gender bias when it comes to prescription drugs. The team from Toronto is working to prevent diagnostic delay for endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome. So this is bridging a gap between patients and medical professionals that can exist sometimes just because of the knowledge gap or a lack of access to knowledge. And then Pando is a tool to help predict and prevent crowd-related disasters. So really, really exciting work. So moving forward to EDI and AI, as I mentioned, the AI4Good Lab addresses the gender disparity that exists in AI and tech. So when we are creating spaces like this, there is data to support the need for these spaces. And I think that's really important to mention. There is so much value in being with folks that relate to us, that we can relate to, that have the same kind of lived experience as us. And so here are some of the numbers. I won't read them out loud, but essentially, women and gender diverse individuals continue to be significantly underrepresented in AI. And there is a kind of trend where, yes, there might be, for example, a lot of girls interested in STEM and women studying STEM in undergraduate university and undergrad. But eventually, because, as I mentioned, this culture that is exclusionary is reinforcing itself, you can enter the workplace, but if you don't feel like you belong there, if you don't feel included, if you don't feel like you have access to the same opportunities as others, you might want to exit that field or that workplace. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. So my last bullet point is just this kind of highlighting this issue of progression and actually people being able to sustain careers because of the lack of equity and diversity and inclusion that's currently in the landscape. And so the lab, again, is addressing this in a few ways. Equity, you could say, through the mentorship, for example, that we are able to offer. Or through the access to the teachers or workshop facilitators that we're giving them. So it's not just giving everyone the same opportunity, which would be equality, but we're really focusing on equity and trying to understand the unique barriers that folks are facing based on their identity, and then providing solutions that way. Inclusion. So working to create a space that is rooted in inclusion, that is based on trying to get more women and gender diverse individuals included in the industry, so into the space, at the decision-making tables, at the tables where projects are being thought about and developed. And then, of course, diversity. So yes, this program is focused on women and gender diverse folks. So there's a gender lens, but the cohorts are very diverse in every way, in how they think, in where they're from geographically, racially, their sexual orientation. So I think inclusion can really lead the way to having more diversity in the room. But one thing I always say is that kind of there's no point, and I love this visual for this reason. There's not necessarily um, a lot of purpose behind doing this DEI work if we're not also aiming for belonging. And so that's really once you've achieved that feeling or help people achieve that feeling of actually knowing that they do in fact belong in the space. If I am just included, maybe I still don't feel safe in the space. Maybe I feel like my ideas aren't being heard, my voice isn't being listened to. Um, there could be a lot of things that are still making me feel not quite safe or a part of the space. And so that's what we're hoping to achieve, really. That's when I'm talking about this culture change piece. It's yes, let's train more women and gender diverse people in AI, but let's also hopefully change the culture where, you know, they also feel like they belong there, like they're welcomed. And so that is a challenging goal. I think culture change can happen really slowly, but I'm confident that the lab, for example, that is training these women and gender diverse people is also instilling certain values in them around social good, around community building that they are then bringing into these workplaces and back to their universities. And so they're helping to change the culture as well. And so just to give you an idea of kind of the impact on these last couple of slides, what I really want to call out here is that such a high percentage of our trainees after doing the program are interested in continuing on in their journey in learning about AI and machine learning, whether that's through getting a graduate degree or whether that's through pursuing a career. And I think the results just highlight the ongoing need for spaces like this where individuals can have equitable access to learning opportunities, to mentors, to networks, to learn alongside people who look like them, who have shared lived experience, and to learn from allies who they know are just as passionate about this mission as they are. Um, and lastly, please do stay in touch. If you're interested in the AI4Good Lab in any capacity, just learning more about it, how you might be able to get involved or volunteer. The majority of folks who are supporting the program are actually doing it on a volunteer basis, again, underlining their commitment to increasing gender diversity in AI. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you are interested in learning more. Thank you so much.
Jennifer, that was remarkable. Thank you for laying out so clearly how you've created a space for women and gender diverse people. And I'm really proud that this work is happening in Canada. How exciting is that? The stats you showed were kind of shocking and amazing that the opportunity is there. Some questions for you from our students. Is there a cost to the program?
Oh, great question. No, there is not. So the program is free. We are very grateful to our generous sponsors, and that's one of those barriers that I mentioned that we try to eliminate. So the program is free of cost, and we also give students a stipend to participate in the program.
Could you explain to our students who don't know what a stipend is, what
Sure,
stipend
sure.
is?
Absolutely. So the stipend is essentially a sum of money for your participation in the program, and it is no strings attached. So we say this money is to cover any needs that might come up during the program. So that could be to help you with your groceries. So the program is full time, and it's really hard to work while you're doing a full-time boot camp. So it could go towards your rent, your groceries, really whatever you want, but it's a no strings attached sum of money that we give you to just further support you as you're doing the program.
Okay, another question for you. So students who are in grade 12 now, and are interested at like what year do they need to be in order to apply?
So the youngest student we've had has been aged 18. So from an age perspective, I would say 18 and up is usually the range. Um, in terms of what you need to apply beyond that, when I'm looking at your application, again, I'm just looking to make sure that the pace of the program will be you'll be well suited to follow along. So the math courses that I mentioned, for example, would include calculus, linear algebra, and statistics as math that you might want to be exposed to before joining the program because there's no math courses. We really just go straight into an intro to machine learning curriculum. We also ask applicants their level with Python. And so what we've seen is over time, more and more applicants actually have existing experience with coding. And I think it's more and more common to kind of learn how to code as a hobby or maybe in school, et cetera. I'm sure many of you are familiar. And so we're just looking to get a sense of how comfortable you are with Python. And then we place you in small groups. So there's a TA or teaching assistant that provides daily support to a small group of students. For example, last year we had in Montreal 25 trainees. So we had 5 groups of 5 and 5 teaching assistants to answer any questions they had after lectures, or just to help kind of guide them along their learning journey. And so we would kind of place you in groups with folks who have a similar background so that you are learning at the same pace.
That's amazing, and how exciting to make a whole bunch of new friends,
Yeah,
complete
that
strangers.
honestly, that is one of the top outcomes. So at the end of every cohort, we do a survey to understand what the most important things the trainees took from the program is. And of course, it's always, new skills in machine learning, new contacts in AI, but the number one is always the relationships that they build. And I think that's amazing. And our co-founders have repeatedly said that's why they started this program, to help folks with shared values and shared passions connect. So it's great.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. So younger students out there, you heard some math courses for you to take, get some coding background. And if any of you are at Learn to Code with AI, it was one of our earlier sessions that we were exploring Chat GPT, teach us how to code. So there's lots of courses out there that you could start taking to learn that. Jennifer, I'm thinking of Kamitha Dunn, that I heard recently speak, and she is the lead researcher for Microsoft for user experience design for actually Copilot. So this is one of the people that's working on Copilot, a tool that you may have already used out there. And she's at the other end of that diversity, equity, and inclusion. So here you are creating the people that are going to go out and work. From her perspective, what she told us is why they want diverse people in their company. She described it this way. She said, when you have diverse people in the company, and we are looking for them all the time, you have more ideas, you have better ideas, you have ideas about things that you may not have thought about, which means that you're going to be able to develop solutions for more problems that are out there, which then means you're going to be able to, support the needs or help needs of more people. So she had a very pragmatic view for it. And I think that's a really nice balancing between what you're creating here and then companies who are hiring and desperately looking for more diversity in people so that, for them to be successful as companies, they need to sell their products. So we need people
Yes.
to create products. And so this is why this piece matters. Wow, this has been a fantastic session. Again, apologies for all the tech issues. We're going to be hearing from some students from the AI4Good Lab, all about data privacy is one of the sessions we're going to be having. So I'm very grateful that you've connected with us with some of your amazing students. Excited that they're coming. I want to thank you for all you've done to help, I think, connect us to speakers, but also for your wonderful work at AI4Good Lab. Thank your whole team for that and for being with us today, because it really was a fascinating presentation and brought things to our students that they haven't heard before. And I'm sure has got some ideas going like, I'm going to do that.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure. And please don't hesitate to reach out. Heidi knows how to reach me if you have questions or just want to chat. So I'm always available.
All right, amazing. Okay, over to tech support. All
Okay.
right, bye everyone.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Jeff.
Sorry about that, Jennifer. And that was